welcoming several guests with us tonight. So we'll proceed first with Finance and Personnel Committee that's chaired by Councilmember Crowell and joined by Council Members Smedley, Reisner, and Katsas.
Thank you, President Isley. Welcome, everyone. I would like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving week and have hopes for safely staying home and enjoying with your immediate family your Thanksgiving festivities. Tonight we have quite a few items on our Finance and Personnel agenda, so let's get right to it. We are starting with the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau agreement. The city has a agreement with the Bureau that is really for the purpose of providing financial support for the operation of the Bureau. And this is an annual agreement that we do every year in December. And basically it agrees that 50% of our tourism fund goes to help run the Visitors Bureau. And I recommend no changes to this agreement for this coming year, particularly in the face of the pandemic. And we are fortunate tonight to have the interim director of the Bureau with us, Mr. Boone Troyer, and he was going to give us his thoughts on where the Bureau is today and what he hopes to see coming up in the future. Boone, would you like to speak to council?
Yeah, quick thank you to everyone for allowing me to speak tonight. I saw this as a unique opportunity to be able to kind of present a little bit about our transition here so far, and then what our focus will be kind of moving into the future and into 2021. So I'll start with a brief history of our transition. As many of you are aware, we did have a transition with our executive director. I've stepped in as the interim director here for the Visitors Bureau. I've been in this placement approximately 2 months now. In that 2-month time period, we have focused on some organizational tasks. With any transition of that magnitude, it provides an opportunity to really review some organizational aspects of the organization. So within those 2 months, we have already started to look at our policies and procedures and updating those related to our agency. We've also discussed pretty intently on our board placements. We've had, unfortunately, some folks step down off of our board. And we've gone through the policies and procedures and the process for placing folks on the board. We've come up with some new outlines for that. And I'm happy to say that currently right now, just as of last week, we have 3 folks stepping in to those roles. So we're excited about some of those opportunities for change and some growth in that. We have, within the first week of being placed as the interim director, just a quick little story here. Unfortunately, on day 1, I walked in the first hour and found out that our website was down, and it was down forever. That was the first hour of me coming in as interim director. So there was an immediate challenge there. And what we have been able to do is we put up an interim site. We're working with a new company on our website development right now in hopes that we kind of finalize that process sooner rather than later. There's some design aspects that we're working on right now. Related to our organization as far as staff goes, again, many of you are aware of this. Unfortunately, we had several staff members that were on furlough throughout the duration of the summer last year. We currently have 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee. And unfortunately, one of those staff members is on permanent layoff, and we had to deal with that within the last 2 months. So some of those responsibilities have been spread out through the remainder of the staff. We have also gone through all of our budgetary items, as many folks are in our community, going through the budget challenges with COVID impacts on different agencies. We went through every single line item down to the penny. I was very focused on making sure that we knew where that money was going and where the money was coming from. I've been through contract negotiations with an inordinate amount of companies related to our agency. We have been able to hold on to those relationships with each of those agencies and those contract negotiations. However, we've been able to decrease the amount of money that we were paying into those different agencies, but we're still receiving receiving what those agencies are giving us. So those contract negotiations have gone very well. It was important to me that we keep those relationships built. So as we rebuild in 2021, we still have those relationships with those agencies to be able to increase the funding or increase marketing through them. We still are focused on 2021. Our main goals here are making sure that we can focus on regional tourism in a safe way. Of course, we want folks to wear their masks, wash their hands, socially distance. Our goals moving into 2021 are to plan for being able to still do events, but doing those in a safe way. So as of right now, we actually have several groups that are coming in. Motorcycle riding is not necessarily my thing. However, we have our Windy 9 program, and that actually allows folks to be outside. They're socially distanced. It's an activity that folks are still doing in a safe way and still are staying in town. So the Windy 9 program actually kind of carried us through the furlough time, and thanks to our previous executive director for kind of keeping things going through the summer so that we could still be here today. So with those, we actually have, like I mentioned, several groups that are planned for 2021 already coming in with over 300 plus riders for several of those. That's going to be a big carry for us as far as group rides go. We're also really focused on our outdoor recreation. We have seen some research, again, just in the last 2 months of being back. We've seen a lot of research now that there's a focus on health and wellness and outdoor spaces. And so going into 2021, we foresee this continuing. And so we're going to really be promoting our outdoor spaces, which we all know Athens County has a wonderful outline for outdoor recreation. So that's going to be a focus in 2021. And again, we see this regional tourism focus. This is something that I've kind of brought to light in several conversations that I've had with a multitude of folks, is that we need to be focusing as Athens County and as a regional tourism destination. And I'm a very team-minded person. Again, as many of you know me, I like to work together to come up with solutions. And I'm really excited to be able to step into this role and work with all of you and all of the different agencies and all of our partners to come up with solutions on how we can still promote travel and tourism in a safe way. I think Athens is kind of set in a unique perspective to be able to push that idea. So that's in 2021. We do have a health and wellness campaign that we're going to focus on for the wintertime. This focuses more on mental health and awareness. Everyone's working from home. They're going through the pandemic. Everyone's been affected in different ways. And we anticipate folks needing to kind of get away. And so we're focusing on the health and wellness and mental aspect of that for our winter campaigns. Further out into 2021 and further on, I have some plans. We would like to be, as a board, we've discussed this and I've talked to other partners. We would like to come up with a comprehensive plan for a 3 to 5 year plan on where we're focusing moving forward. And this is going to be a conversation that I very intentionally want to include the regional tourism idea and all of our partners that we're working with for what that focus might be in the future. So with all of that said, in the marketing research in the last 2 months, kind of what we're going to be focusing on really strongly is the outdoor recreation, the mental health and wellness. And then we also realize that in the research analysis that we're kind of covering, that there are a lot of folks that are focused quite intently on staying closer to home. So our marketing outreach is going to be for a lot of those metro areas in the state of Ohio and kind of surrounding states. The travel and tourism trends are focusing more on being closer to home just because of safety precautions. So our goal will be to communicate what our safety outline is for our community and for our county so that folks can travel in a safe way. So that's kind of a brief outline of where we are right now, some things that we've done just in the 2 month time frame that I've been here. And like I mentioned, the last thing that I'll kind of leave you with is that I am intently focused on where our budgetary items lie and what those contracts look like, and ensuring that we get a high return on investment when it comes to our marketing decisions, especially moving into 2021 with the virus, and communicating the safety precautions and following the guidelines as we move forward in travel. And that's all I had.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Mr. Troyer, and I appreciate that update. I believe Council is looking towards renewing this agreement, and I'm now opening it up to Finance and Personnel Committee members to speak to this. Member Katsas.
Member Crowell, thank you. And Boone Troyer, thank you so much for attending this evening. I have just two questions. The first one is an easy one because I know that Member Crowell referred to you as the interim director. That is no longer the case. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe my contract will actually go in December 1st, but the board voted on Friday to offer me the full-time position, and I did accept that.
Okay, good. So that gives us a little bit more clarity as you're planning these long-term strategies that we're not going to have another person show up on the first committee in December. The second question I did have also, and this is just to kind of wrap our head around the financial hit that your agency has taken. Can you speak to kind of the what we're not seeing in TGT tax, like for example, and I know that we're not seeing the amount of sellouts in hotel rooms that we usually see.
Yeah, so I can kind of touch on that a little bit. As I mentioned during the summer, we very unfortunately, the previous executive director was the only person in the office. The rest of the office was put on furlough for basically the entire duration of the summer. We had a fairly low hotel tax, lodging tax that came in for our previous quarter. We just got the last quarter's update here in November, and those numbers are much better. I'm very confident with the items that we've taken with our contracts, basically the renegotiations that we've had with all those contracts, the amount of money that we've saved there, the amount of money that we've actually saved and pay out for our employees has been a significant amount. Where we are at right now, I feel very confident that we're going to make it through the winter. And the hope is that in the turn of the spring, when things kind of start to turn the corner a little bit, we'll have more folks coming in. We also know, as I mentioned, the vacation properties and those type of rentals are continuing. Even with the virus, folks are still staying at the Airbnb properties, and they're focused on that outdoor recreation. They want to be socially distant and safe in a way. Unfortunately for the hotels themselves, that is not the case. We still see hotel increase, but as I mentioned, our November numbers increased substantially, and the hope is that will continue.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Member Smedley.
Thanks, Member Crowell. Thanks for joining us, Director Troyer, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I know you from your previous role with the community center, running the summer camp, and you did an exceptional job there, and I'm sure you'll do an exceptional job in your new role. The Visitors Bureau is lucky to have you. And I just cannot imagine the challenges that you must be facing in this time with that sort of bureau. So thank you for the work that you're doing right now. Sounds like you're on top of it. And hopefully things will turn around for you. And just appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you.
I'll add something real quick here. It's extremely cheesy, but kind of one of my focuses and a saying that I follow is problems are only solutions waiting to happen. And I very truly believe that. I've told everyone that I've talked to, the reason that I accepted this position is because I want to take on that challenge. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be extremely difficult. We have had a decrease in the amount of funding, but my goal is to change that. That's why I said yes to the position.
Okay, thank you, Finance and Personnel Committee. Does anyone else, Member Clodfelder, have a comment for Mr. Troyer?
More of a question, I guess, or a combination question and comment. I don't know if your department always receives updates from council, excuse me, but we have approved those parklets for the uptown businesses to continue indefinitely. So we're hoping that more businesses will have outside tables, which might be a really good thing for people who go to Hocking Hills, and if we could get a few of them down to come and have a meal outside, that would be great for Athens. So I was just hoping that you were aware of that.
Yes, I am, and I've actually had some significant conversations regarding the parklets. We have some folks that very much enjoy those, and we've kind of been pushing the idea of like, all right, well, several other places could have these. It gives a unique perspective to dining on Court Street. So yes.
Yeah, I agree. And if we could even get like half of 1% of those 4 million people a year that go to the Hocking Hills, that would do really good things for our local economy.
We very intentionally in this office, in the past 2 years that I've worked here as a partnership engagement manager as well, we very intentionally try to reach out to those folks.
Great.
We have some significant programming that is specifically related to that.
That's very good to hear. Thank you. And congratulations again.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other council members, City Administration, Mayor Patterson.
Thank you, Councilmember Crowell, and congratulations from me to you, Mr. Troyer. You mentioned a minute ago that the hotels, you're starting to see a rise. At least for the month of November, an increase in the TGT. You also referenced Airbnb or short-term rentals. And are you tracking revenue coming in from short-term rentals versus coming in from the hotels? Or is it just that you are getting 100% of the TGT from the county, and certainly you get 50% of the transient guest tax from the city of Athens? So are you tracking Airbnb or short-term rentals versus hotels?
The short answer to that is yes. The way that comes in from the county, we actually receive a report when we get that funding, and that report it actually breaks all of that down of where that funding is coming from. That was actually one of the first tasks that I did in the first week. Was I reached out to Cindy in the auditor's office and was able to request a breakdown of where that funding was coming from. So I do have that. Yes. Okay.
And I guess a reminder to anyone who's watching us all tonight that the city of Athens currently just has Airbnb or short-term rentals in Bs, in the B zones. But there is legislation sitting with council somewhere.
Thank you, Mayor. Excellent points. Any other comments for Mr. Troyer? Okay, Mr. Troyer, congratulations. Thank you for your past work and your work going forward, and for your comments to council tonight.
Thank you.
Moving on in our agenda, the next item is the third-party health insurance contract. This and the next item are both annual agreements with administrators of portions of the city's self-insured self-insurance. And let me just pull up my relevant notes here. HR Director Ron Lucas, has indicated that there are no plans by the city administration to change organizations for this coming year. So this first one on the item will go forward as not next week, because we won't be meeting on the 5th Monday, but the following Monday, we will be looking at an ordinance to authorize our Service Safety Director to enter into this contract with the Employee Benefit Service Center, which is the third party administering the city's insurance program. And there will be no major changes to that ordinance. Are there any, or to that agreement, are there any questions from Finance and Personnel about the third-party health insurance contract for 2021? Any comments from other council members? City Administration? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, also related to the same issue, is the stop loss insurance contract. Also, the same organization that held the contract in 2021 or in 2020, Sirius America. And this would be a one-year contract to cover the city's stop loss insurance. Are there any comments on the stop loss portion of this? Yes, Member Fall.
Thank you. Could you just explain what stop loss is for people who don't know what stop loss is? Thank you.
Well, I was having a bit of an education on that myself, and I can tell you what I know. Let's see. I thought for a minute Mr. Lucas was with us, but I don't see him now.
Councilmember Crowell, you do have Service Safety Director Tom Piles with us too.
Okay. Mr. Pyle, would you like to discuss the stop loss?
Yeah, so briefly, since the city's self-insured, we take out a stop loss insurance program to protect us from catastrophic injury or health issue where the insured would spend or we would be required to pay our own money up to a certain amount, and then the stop loss kicks in and protects the city from having to pay all of its reserve out for a catastrophic injury or health issue. And I don't know what that number is, but it's six figures. I know that. And we have hit it before with employees in the past. And so it's good insurance to have.
Thank you, Chief Pyle. Any other questions on this item? Yes, Member Grace.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, is that is it a limit on a per employee if the employee's individual insurance hits that amount? And is there also a whole city, all city employees, if we, sort of like an individual and a family deductible sort of thing, can we hit that limit both ways?
No, there may be a cumulative limit, but I'm not aware of that. It's per insured, so it also applies to all dependents as well.
Thank you.
Other comments? City administration? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Moving forward to the next item on our agenda, the cemetery fund. I believe we'll be talking about this both in this item as well as appropriations and transfers. We have been basically struggling in the cemetery fund since acquiring the Union Street Cemetery in 2015. Our revenues do not match our expenses, and we need to figure out how to go forward. The auditor is recommending a transfer from the general fund into a cemetery fund. The Service Safety Director's office has a plan in place. Mr. Andrew Cheeky has been looking into this very closely and has a number of ideas in order to help with this problem of revenues not matching expenses. One thing we will start doing is starting to sell plots. And in order to do that, we need to set up a separate fund line to better track our revenue for the cemetery fund. I see we have Auditor Hecht with us tonight. Is there anything that you want to add to that, Auditor Hecht?
Well, Member Crowell, you did an excellent job. The ORC requires us to set up a separate fund for cemeteries that we own. We knew that we were not going to sell any plots. The revenue we've had for the last 5 years has been barely $5,000, maybe $7,000 a year for monument placement and interment. So it's not enough to support the electric bills and the maintenance and landscapers. So we put special account lines in the general fund, but as you know, on the revenue side, and we do have 2 cemetery revenue lines that we can track, but we've only used one of them. And the cost for all of those other expenses is $50,000 to $60,000 a year. So that way, basically, the general fund was subsidizing the cemetery fund because we have no direct revenue except for those, occasional costs. So we have now decided to sell plots. And as you said, to better track our revenue, we have created a new fund, and we are going to have to transfer money from the general fund into that fund to pay for the expenses above and beyond whatever revenue we get. And yes, as you said, Deputy Service Safety Director Chicky has done a lot of research on the cemeteries, what we can and can't do. He knows a lot about the operations, and I shared with him. It just was interesting that recently on my listserv, or one of them, someone else asked how people were funding their cemetery funds because they're basically a money pit. And so several of them did the same thing we did. Ones who didn't put the funds in their general fund were transferring money out of their general fund to put in their cemetery fund also. So, and we aren't allowed to issue a levy for that. There's just other things involved there that we don't really have a good way to do that. So we have talked about changing our tax mix. However, we will have payroll coming out of there in January. So I recommend that for this year, we go ahead and transfer money from the general fund into that fund. And as the year goes on, we can see how it goes, how much revenue above and beyond what we've been getting we might get. And then if council still wants to set up a change of ways to get money in there, we can do that at any point next year, I would say. But this is what we need to do right now. And I think legally I'll feel a lot better having our own fund as long as council is willing to transfer money into the cemetery fund, which is similar to what we do with the water debt fund. The water debt does not have any direct revenue. Every year we transfer money from the water fund into the water debt fund to make our debt payments. So it's not something we haven't done before. I think that's enough.
Thank you, Auditor. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, Member Fall. Oh, I'm sorry, Member Katsas. Hold on, Member Fall. Member Katsas?
I'm sorry, I jumped in there at the last second. During the conversation that I participated in about this, there was some talk about maybe shifting, because currently aren't the people who are in charge of the cemeteries, are they lands and building? Is that correct?
Yes.
I see some head nods. Yes, thank you. Will they still remain in that same department, or are we talking about shifting?
We have 2 part-time employees who do cemetery work, and they will now be paid out of the cemetery fund.
Okay. They would still report to the same people, though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Member Fall?
Just a real quick reality check for the city was that we had no choice but to take the cemetery on, it's in the ORC that that's what happens when other like cemetery associations dissolve and such, is that we had no choice, and we need to, per ORC, and keep it up to good order for basically eternity. So it's not something that we can get rid of. It's a duty that we have to, people who've spent money to be put there, but also to the community, because at some point this cemetery will also be historical, just like our other cemetery. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Fall. Mayor Patterson? You're muted, sir.
Go figure. Yes, I know. I just want to express my appreciation for all the work that Andrew Chicky has put into exploring this. He has done a lot of sextant work with the cemetery. And he has also explored the possibility of having a columbrium there in the cemetery, that there is room to put one in that would be large enough to accept 300 plus urns with urn niches in this. But so we're continuing to explore what can be done. He feels that it might be cost effective to do something like this, but still more work to be had when it comes to something like that. But again, I just want to acknowledge all the work that Andrew has put into this, which has been a lot of hours that he's dedicated to figuring this out, and how the aisles can be used to intern future deceased.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. A bit more information to give everyone a sense of the gravity of this issue. As from the auditor's office, it appears that revenue is around $8,000 or $9,000 a year, and expenses are $60,000, $60,000 to plus $1,000 a year. So we do need to do something to fix this situation. Other comments? Okay, thank you all. Moving on to appropriations and transfers. The transfer that I'm aware of is this cemetery fund. The auditor's office is recommending transferring $50,000 from the general fund into the cemetery fund in order to begin to track this fund better than we are now. That is the only appropriation that I'm aware of. Are there any others of which I have not? Yes, member Auditor Hecht.
Well, just to back up to that appropriation, in a discussion this afternoon with the deputy auditor, I sent that out with 50,000, but after talking to our accounts payable person, they both recommend that transfer be 60,000 based on what the budget was last year. Sorry, I'd already set that out before that, but thank you.
That's quite all right. That makes more sense to me in looking at the figures that you provided to us previously. Okay, moving on to our next item on finance and personnel, vacant staff positions. I'll just remind the public and council that this summer we made an official request to city administration for council to review. It's a non-binding request to review vacant positions in this time of the pandemic, and they have worked very well with council on doing that. The service safety director is recommending filling a number of vacant positions. At this time, I would like to share my condolences to the family of Ray Guerin, who is not connected to this position, but it is he was a valued member of city staff, and it is difficult for the city to continue to move forward when we don't have the crucial staff that we need. But my condolences to the Guerin family. But I believe there are two positions that SSD Pile would like to fill. Is that correct?
I didn't count. There are several.
I know that there are several. Are there a couple that you would like to fill? Supervisor?
Yeah. So what we talked about in Tuesday's meeting last week was we have currently a vacant wastewater treatment plant operator position that's been unfilled this year because of the pandemic. And we were moving forward with replacing our mechanic at City Garage, the position vacated by the death of Dana Nichols. And so it's likely that our candidate to fill that mechanic's position will be another wastewater treatment plant operator, or at least it's possible. And so what I've requested is if that comes to pass, that we do transfer an employee from the wastewater treatment plant. That would leave us 2 operators down at the wastewater treatment plant. And I recommend that we replace at least one of those positions because it will impact the job duties of the remaining employees down there, including requiring them to work considerable amounts of mandated overtime. And that's going to have a heavy toll on the staff. And so I think we ought to move forward with hiring at least one wastewater treatment plant operator. And then we just realized a transfer, and I mentioned this also in Tuesday's meeting, a transfer of a maintenance tech back into a parking enforcement position. So the good news is the parking enforcement position the department is fully staffed now again, but that creates 2 maintenance tech positions. There are only 4, so they're down 50% down there. And these are the guys that salt the roads and fill the potholes and put up the street signs and sweep the streets and those kinds of things. And so I recommend that we fill at least one of those maintenance tech positions. We had already discussed the street supervisor position that's being vacated by the retirement of Kurt Mail. And we were moving forward with that. We've actually given a test. All 4 of the candidates are internal candidates. And so it remains to be seen what position will be vacated. And we'll come back and speak to that when we make that promotion for whoever is a successful candidate. And then we talked about the environmental coordinator position too, which I think is next on the agenda. And then we haven't talked about law enforcement positions or firefighters positions, but we have a new retirement in the fire department that's been announced. And so they'll be down 2 firefighters by the end of the year. And so we may want to consider that in January or something, looking at firefighters. So there are a lot of moving parts. And I have to say, every time we fill a position, recently it's been an internal movement. And so, it's a lot of moving parts. Employee comes from this department, transfers to that department, it creates a vacancy over here. Arts, Parks, and Rec has a lot of vacancies, and a lot of candidates come from Arts, Parks, and Rec to other agencies. And so we're going to have to take a look at APR as well at some point. But for tonight, definitely I wanted to mention the filling of the wastewater treatment plant operator if the successful candidate for mechanic does transfer, and then the MT position down at the street department, at least one of those positions.
Mayor Patterson?
Just to add to this, as you recall, when we did have this conversation about staffing with council over the summer, and council having, being aware of positions needed, part of that narrative was talking about the criticality of certain positions, and we certainly have plans in place. But, when you look at something like the wastewater treatment plant, that is a critical asset for the city of Athens, and to be potentially down 2 operators, there's a real need to make sure that we are at least bringing a operator on to bring us back to partially the way there. And then also, as Chief Pyle indicated, with street crews to where we have at least bringing ourselves partially up to where we should be. Because if we ended up having, as we're watching coronavirus cases increasing in our county, today it went up by another 50 throughout the county. There's a reality out there that we could start to experience some of the city personnel coming down with COVID-19 as careful as they are. It's still a reality, so we need to make sure that in our critical positions that we are in a safe place in terms of being able to maintain daily operations, as opposed to what Chief Pyle indicated, which would be bringing people in on unbelievably large amounts of overtime just to keep things running smoothly.
One other position I forgot to mention, Mayor, I'm sorry, were you done?
I am.
Yeah. The other position that you mentioned today, Sam, that I'd forgotten about was, we are moving forward with transferring a solid waste inspector over to Arts, Parks, and Rec to fill the facility operations position. And when that solid waste inspector position is vacated, it might be doable now with less students in town, but when we reach normal population of students, which could happen anytime between now and April, we're going to need that solid waste inspector. There are two. We will lose one. We're going to need that position filled and that is aside from other things, helping to keep the city clean, it does generate revenue, that position. And so I recommend that we fill that one without delay as well. And that one we could hire and test and whatnot in the first few months of the year and get them on board before spring, let's say.
President Isley, did you have a comment?
Well, I did, and I wondered, but I think you've answered my question, Chief Pyle, that you're saying move forward with filling that solid waste position, because I would agree, the students are coming back January 19th, and we need someone, and the difference between one solid waste officer and two, and the amount that they can accomplish, they're both very skilled, but it makes all the difference. So yeah. I would just wholeheartedly agree. The other question I have is, if I understand right, you're talking of filling the one wastewater treatment plant position and the one maintenance tech position now, even though you're down two in both of those slots. And you think, and your opinion is that will prevent significant overtime by at least being able to fill the one?
I think it will prevent some. I'd like to see, and I'm sure the auditor will agree with this, I'd like to see the carryover, the budget, the revenue projections for next year before we even talk about filling the other two vacancies. And that's true with the police department, the fire department. Everybody has been working short, and every division has vacancies. And take Jessica Dine, for instance, filling in, that's a vacancy, and Kurt Mail will be retiring, and that will be a vacancy, and the two MTs, and I could go down the list. And so, but we are very considerate of budget. And so before we considered filling the other two positions, I'd really want to get into next year a little bit and see how we're doing budget-wise.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Yes, Auditor Hecht.
Oh, I was just wondering, Tom, Director, if you could make a list of all of these positions in motion and the ones that you predict to be filled in-house and which might open up other new positions, not necessarily in that department. And I don't know, it would be very helpful to me in my office, but I would think that council could use that too. And then maybe just a quick blurb on these I need to do right now. These can wait till January, a month from now. Not long wait.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. And, I started to do that with the budget and then just got engrossed in the budgeting. But at last count, if I include interns and permanent part-time and then the full-time positions, we were well over 20 positions down. Now, a good chunk of that, I'd say 9 or 10 of those were part-time or intern positions, but some of them are these positions that are now becoming
so 10, 11, that were down in the city. That's a lot at one time, and as Member Crowell mentioned, that we lost one of our longtime electricians, Ray Guerin. And so I assume that position is another necessary one that needs to be filled. And I just thought I'd put this out there for people around town that maybe don't know really who he is. He was the one that I always saw up in the trucks, switching out our banners, hanging Christmas lights, and things like that. He had really dark hair. So if any of you remember seeing someone like that working in town in a bucket truck, they did many other things, but that was, I don't know, nice memory of mine of Ray.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Well, Auditor Heck, you opened that door, so I'm going to walk through it. Just to kind of put an exclamation mark on what Auditor Heck just said, a story was shared with me from my executive assistant to where Ray would go so far as to use the bucket truck and several small juvenile squirrels were trapped up on a power line, and Ray even got the squirrels off the power line and got them to safety. That's the level of care that Ray Guerin had for our community. And Otter Heck, I would always chat with Ray when Ray was done hanging banners. I wouldn't chat with him when he's up in the bucket truck because that's a perilous place to be. But Ray will be missed.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments on the vacant positions? Okay, well, we'll segue right into the next item, which is the environmental coordinator. This is not a vacant position. This is a new position, but I do want to let council and the public know that this position has been contemplated, has been sort of described for well over a year. Director Stone, prior to being deployed, I think even in early 2019, was already thinking about the necessity to have this position. I believe the environmental coordinator also can alleviate some of the issues we have in the wastewater treatment plant in terms of testing and what has to go on there. But this is a new position, as I said, that the city administration would like to hire. They really will be the coordinator for all the city programs that are related to protecting the environment, in particular our surface waters. So they're going to be directly managing our pollutant discharge elimination system, the NPDES program. This is a permit that the city holds. Ohio University also holds the permit, and it has to be managed. They can also will coordinate and serve as the city's inspector for the MS4 program, the Municipal Separate Stormwater System program, again, which Ohio University also does. And then, as I said, they will be connected to the wastewater treatment biosolids program and other environmental connected programs for the city, including, as I mentioned, testing in the city's water and wastewater laboratory. In many discussions with the city, I would agree that this position is a good position to have and to open a hiring for. The city administration has a plan to fund this position from stormwater fees and sewer and water fees. I believe there's still some discussion about the pay grade and whether it's an internal candidate or an outside candidate. But this is an important position. I know we're not trying to, we have a lot of vacant positions right now, and here is a new position, but I believe this new position also fills a need in the city for all of these roles that the environmental coordinator will play. Are there any questions from Finance and Personnel about this position? Member Katsas.
Yes, Member Crowell, thank you. And thank you for jogging my memory about Director Stone talking about this some time ago. And please, Director Pyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but this conversation was kind of thought about as there was a retirement that was coming up with in the Soil and Conservation Agency. Is that correct? No.
No. Yeah. So currently, and for years, the city has contracted with Athens Soil and Water for a portion of the duties of this job. The duties of this job would certainly have more duties than what we currently contract for, but we do contract for soil and water. We were actually going to drop that contract at the beginning of this year and hire this position. And when the pandemic hit, Director Hetty at the time recommended that we forgo hiring that and would save the balance of the difference between the new salary and the contract rate. For this year, I think was just slightly over $33,000, and so we did that. The notion about the retirement it comes into the conversation when we talk about one of the auxiliary duties that Director Stone had intended for this position, which was to be a backup technician for the water and wastewater lab. And I think there was concern that those two employees down there are well past retirement age and could retire at any time. And so by hiring this position in a timely manner, we would have some built-in backup if one of those employees took retirement or had an extended absence, which has happened in the past. And so that was just a small part of the conversation in regards to this position.
Okay. And so my line of questioning was that we will have a savings externally by bringing somebody on to do the duties for the contract we wouldn't be needing anymore.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other comments? Yes, Auditor Hecht.
And I was just going to add to that our contract had probably more to do with reporting requirements, which are strict and a lot. And if we don't comply with our testing and reporting, there's a lot of issues for the agencies that we have to do that with for water, sewer, and stormwater.
That's correct.
That was the contract. Our contract wasn't necessarily having someone else come in and do the testing, but the tracking and reporting of all of that information is very important and is quite involved.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions about the environmental coordinator position? Yes, Member Grace.
Thank you, Member Crowell. And I believe that this would be a very valuable position for the city to have an environmental coordinator. My only real concern with it is the funding of that position, in that in order to fund a new position, we will have to raise rates on our residents. That right now definitely gives me considerable pause. If there are other ways that we could meet our reporting and safety obligations for a bit longer, then I would like to hear those options, because I know that the cost of this new hire is significantly more than the contract with Athens Soil and Water, and I understand that the new employee would be responsible for significantly more. But if I could see more information about where other cost savings are going to come from, or really what is absolutely necessary from that we do right now in terms of really justifying fee increases on residents, because we have current obligations as far as our debt obligations and current employees that are critical and that we have to have. And coming up shortly, we will be discussing the fee increases that are necessary just to meet our existing obligations. And when we have to increase our fees to meet existing obligations, I pause at increasing the fees more for a new hire. So it's not that I doubt the value of this position, but perhaps the timing. And so I just want to state that now as we're talking about the position. And I would be happy to receive additional information from the administration on the necessity of the timing and other expenses that the city would incur if we do not fill or create this position right now.
Thank you, Member Grace. I certainly share your concerns on raising fees during this very difficult time for many of our citizens, if not all of our citizens. I will just note that one of the fees that has been proposed to be raised is the stormwater fee, which has not been raised in quite some time. But I do understand, Member Grace, that the sewer fee was raised in January of this year, of 2020. So I certainly share your concerns. Other comments or responses to Member Grace's concern? Okay, well, we will address that issue again a little bit later, I think, with Member Grace's committee. Member Katsas?
Yes, thank you. Can we get the current rates and what the proposed rates are for the storm sewer? And then also, I believe, is it 10 years that it's been since we've seen a raise in these rates?
I believe just the storm water.
Correct.
It's been 10 years, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Member Grace, I believe, is going to be talking about those possibilities.
Yep, I have a whole list for next committee.
All right, I'll hang out.
Okay. Other comments?
What were the costs
Member
that you were requesting, sir?
Sorry?
What were the costs that Council Member Katsas was requesting?
The storm water. What they currently are and what the proposal was.
The current contract and the proposed rate for the employees, is that what you're asking for? Okay. The difference?
No, just the rate increase for users.
Oh, okay. That's coming up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so on to our last item on our agenda for Finance and Personnel, which is a amendment necessary to our tax ordinance that is unfortunately necessary to deal with some issues at the state level where due to COVID-19, many of our citizens in the state of Ohio, as around the country and the world, are working remotely. They are no longer working within the municipality where their job is. They are working from home, and there are some entities in the state of Ohio, I believe, in many cases, suburbs of larger cities that would like the income tax that normally goes to the municipality to go to where they are actually doing the work, which is in their homes where they live. This obviously would be a huge problem for places like Athens, Ohio, and the income tax that we rely on for all those who work at Ohio University or other places of business here in our city. So this will be coming forward at our next meeting. And it is really a temporary, as I said, it is COVID-19 related. It is to hopefully ensure that those income taxes continue to come to the city of Athens and not go to the municipalities where a remote worker is currently living. I'll turn first to Auditor Hecht because I want to make sure I had that right. Anything you want to add there, Auditor Hecht?
Well, I could add all kinds of things, but yeah, you're correct. The idea is, and I will tell you right now, that our estimate from our largest employer has estimated a $2 million loss to the city if we aren't able to tax people who work for OU but don't live in the city limits. And so that would obviously be a terrible loss for the city. And that would cause us to have a lot of changes, but and that's just our largest employer. So, and as you said, around the state, most of these entities are fighting that because, it's huge losses. So right now, the law has been that we tax employees who work for entities in the city, even if they work from home. And so obviously there are people who would like to change that. And yes, the suburbs around bigger cities would be able to collect those taxes. But areas around us, if you don't already have a tax in place, they won't get anything. These people won't be paying any, income taxes, or local income taxes, I should say, which is most of Athens County. Nelsonville and Albany are the only ones that have that. And so, it just would be such a huge loss to us right now. So that the law has been that we do that now. And I believe it's the House has passed it to stay at least through COVID the way it is, because to add this revenue loss onto the other losses that we will have, as far as business losses coming in the next year, to keep it in place at least through the pandemic. So I believe last I heard it hasn't gone through the Senate, hasn't passed. We're at the point where a lot of things aren't necessarily going on at that level. So depending on what happens there. But in the meantime, for us to be able to do this come January 1st, if it's still the law, we need this wording in our tax code that this, and it would be a temporary one, and we have set it up so it would be its own section and can just be deleted as the whole section. And we have talked to Debbie about that. And so for the time being, we'd like to continue to be able to collect those local income taxes. And see where things go from there. And it probably is a COVID thing. I suspect a lot of people will continue to work from home. Employers will find out that certain employees can do everything they do from home and will not necessarily come back. They won't have to provide them office space, et cetera, et cetera. So, that will probably happen across the country. I suspect some of my kids will have that. But anyway, for the time being, it's just we have enough losses already that we just really need to continue this for the time being. And I don't know. I don't, unless somebody has specific questions, it's probably enough for me to say.
That's very helpful. Thank you. If anyone wants to look further into this, this is House Bill 197. It's section 29 of House Bill 197. If you'd like to follow this any other way. Member Clodfelder?
I have a question out of curiosity. One thing that I've wondered that might be a really helpful kind of sort of a help for our economy here in Athens is because we have such a high quality of life here in Athens, maybe remote workers from other states would like to move here. And if somebody comes from out of state, but is, working remotely for a company in their past state, how would that work for the income tax? Would they still pay the income tax in that other state, or?
It depends. Not everybody collects income taxes the way we do, because Ohio is a home rule state. We have 588 or so entities who collect their own income tax, and that is not the case in every state. So it depends on what they have. Okay. The other part about our collection is when people come in temporarily, If they're here more than 20 days, they have to start paying our tax anyway.
Okay.
So we would probably, there's just not a lot we can do if people aren't living or working here and they're deemed not to have to pay. We're out a lot of money, and
No, I completely agree that, we definitely need to get this
so
resolved.
as far as other states, it's it depends on those states and how they collect income taxes. Not all of them have local individual income taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Auditor. Any other comments on this issue? Okay, thank you very much, President Isley. That ends Finance and Personnel.
Thanks, Councilmember Crowell. And we'll now move on to Planning and Development Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Fall with members Reisner, Grace, and Smedley. And thanks to our city planner, Paul Logue, for waiting for us this evening.
Thank you. Tonight, we only have one agenda item, and it's to discuss the update to our comprehensive plan that will be coming before council in the near future. And so we wanted to open up a discussion. Paul Logue is here to describe the process and the findings, some of the findings that have come out of the process that we've been in for the last, almost probably 2 years, if not more. And so I just want to set it up to talk briefly about why do we put so much time and energy into a comprehensive plan. And I just want to say that when you do good planning, when good planning is done for communities, it makes it stronger. And that's one of the overarching goals that we've been trying to achieve in Athens, is sustainability, community strength, resiliency. And so the process is important in itself, besides the product that it provides, because it gets people talking with each other, community members working together to share visions about what they want to see their community grow into. And that was done a lot in this process. I want to commend Planner Paul. He's done a phenomenal job. He had a super excellent team of interns and other people who worked with him. They put hours and hours of work into this. And I think that it helps for people to understand that when we talk about policy, like complete streets or some other type of policy, wastewater, sustainability, bike trails, bike paths. And when we say, well, we know our community wants these things, that's because we've gone through this planning process. That's when we say in our sustainability plan, it says X, Y, and Z, and that's why we're doing this policy ordinance. So I just want to say that is a really extraordinarily important thing for our community. I think I'm just so happy to be with him and have this out. So thank you. So Paul, could you take it away?
Chris, Council, good evening. It's been a really long day for, I think, a lot of city employees with the passing of Ray Guerin and everything else going on in the world. So I will try to be brief this evening. I know Council's been already on for over hour and 10 minutes, so I'll try to keep this down to about 10 minutes and then allow for some discussion, of course. I do have just a couple. First of all, of course, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening, and I hope everybody is doing well. I do have just a few. I want to take a broad picture, broad view of the comprehensive plan. I believe everybody should have a copy of the draft document. Just so everybody is clear, that document. Upon adoption, we will be cleaning that up and making it into an attractive, glossy type document with maps and pictures and nice graphics. We have a few different versions of that, but what I found out was every time I would make an edit here or there, it would take hours to try to reconfigure all of that and communicate with the person who was assisting me with desktop layout. So what we said, well, let's get the text done, and then we'll wrap up with the attractive version of it. Let me bring up, if it's okay, I'm going to do a share screen. If everybody can see my screen here in a second. and just have a few key points from a PowerPoint presentation. Let me see here. Is that available to council?
Mm-hmm.
I see it.
Okay. Okay, so like Council Representative Fall mentioned, just give a little bit of background on the plan. Our current comprehensive plan was completed by a consulting firm, Poggemeyer, out of the Toledo area. It was a very expensive process. I know budgets are really a concern for council and for the administration. That cost, I believe, the price for that plan back in the early 2000s exceeded $250,000 to consultants. The cost of our plan as of today to consultants is less than $5,000. So not a bad deal. We did have a lot of interns who participated in this comprehensive planning process with me, and I'm grateful for the work that they did as well. That plan we wrapped up about 15 years ago and was adopted 13 years ago, shortly before I was hired by the city. I think one of the recommendations in that plan was to hire a planner. So I guess I am proof positive that implementation is important, at least to my family. A lot of the recommendations and strategies in that plan, they've been completed. When I started looking through the plan a couple years ago, I was surprised at how much it actually either was implemented or was no longer viable or was no longer a salient issue. But a lot of it was actually achieved. To the credit of the administration and city council who focused on it. Planning is rooted in a lot of the other things we do, and so one of the goals of this plan is to try to make sure that it supports and is consistent with other available planning documents of the community, including the Economic Development Council, Ohio University's master plan, assorted city plans, including our bike and pedestrian, our arts plans, parks and rec, and our sustainability plan, as well as our uptown planning. Excuse me, hold on. And the city's affordable housing committee. For our plan, we did take a 20-year approach to the plan, looking at it as basically saying, where do we want to be in the year 2040? And it's year 2020, so a 20-year plan. We're right on pace there. And then it's a comprehensive plan. It's comprehensive in nature. We're looking at a lot of different issues, a lot of different topics, and then trying to put all of that together. Some of these topics are rooted in land use. Others are rooted in policies and goals that the city wants, or kind of policies that the community expects us to have. When we were going through the plan, the process, strategies for public engagement, things like that, there was a few things that I was keeping in mind the entire time that I thought were really important from my understanding of the last planning process, but also to my goals as a planner. One of which was I wanted to make sure that we had a lot of opportunities for citizen engagement in the plan. We try to be flexible on that, not just have people come to meetings at 7 o'clock at night on a weeknight, knowing that people are really busy, have a lot of other things that they need to do every evening, and we wanted to make sure that people could be heard even if they couldn't attend a public meeting. We also want to make sure that we made sure that we had contributions from people who are often underrepresented in planning processes. That can be people of low income, minorities, Black people, people with disabilities. Also in Athens, it means college students. We typically don't ask college students their opinions on things. And for this plan, that was a goal I had, was to make sure that we had feedback from college students and about their thoughts and experiences living in Athens. The plan, of course, it's responsive to our citizens' concerns, their thoughts about the future of Athens. And we were aware, of course, that there's external influences that impact our community, things that city council may not have control over, the city administration might. Some of those can be totally unexpected things, such as scooters and rideshare and things along those lines that are kind of technological changes that come out of Silicon Valley that are kind of thrust on us. Other things, of course, external influences, the enrollment at Ohio University and the economic impact of Ohio University. We also want to keep, like I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we were keeping the expenses to a minimum, and we wanted to make sure that our process was accessible and transparent. For sake of time, I'm going to jump forward to what I think is probably the most important thing for City Council to be aware of at this point. And these are the broad takeaways, the really big picture of what this plan means, what is really important for us to be focused on as elected officials and as administrators and as leaders in our community. The first of which is the need to diversify the economy. We're running through that right now, of course, with budget cuts at Ohio University and just how important it is that we have options for people to have businesses in this community and to grow businesses. Although we are Ohio University, of course, is a key component of what Athens is, we need to make sure that we have other options there. So when Ohio University has a downturn, we have ways to minimize that. It's also, we should note that there's not much room for us to grow as far as our city boundaries. We are pinned in by our geography. We've got steep slopes and floodplains. So there's not a lot of options for us to really say, how do we want to grow out? But we do have, and we're also a relatively built out community already. There's not a lot of available land within our city limits. It should also be noted that renewable energy, sustainability initiatives, things along those lines, getting us towards carbon neutrality, getting us off of carbon or off of coal. That is incredibly important to our community. I think we probably are aware of that by now. However, we kept hearing that there's more that we should be trying to do to get us off of carbon and then towards renewable energies. Should also be noted, of course, public art is very well received by our community. We get a lot of compliments when we do public art. Historic preservation is very important to the citizens of Athens. Those are two of the things I think that make us look good, if we're thinking about how do we show off Athens, and so that's important to note. We're also going to have some change coming forward within our corridors, especially with Union Street and Stimson Avenue. We're seeing some change on Stimson already. We've got a brand new gateway there. We've got a street plan or a street improvements plan coming into effect. And we're seeing some change on Union Street as well, both with the public rights of ways, but also with some land development changes, the expansion changes on Ohio University at the College of Engineering and the new Heritage College of Medicine and the new Ohio Health location. And very important, of course, we're not just talking about land use issues. What I think is really interesting about this bullet point, because it's a question of how do we make Athens a home for people, not just a place that they live or a place that they think is nice, but a place where they feel they are part of. And so that has to come down to the core of how do we make sure that people feel included, welcome, but also that they can be complete people living in our community. And there's a lot of issues that we need to address, I think, when it comes to inclusion. But we also heard that a lot of people think we're working really hard on that. Also, key takeaway, when we plan for people who are not as able-bodied as most of us might be right now, but we have benefits for everybody. And so when we focus on the needs of people with disabilities, we are making a community that's more accessible for them, but also is safer for everybody else. And lastly, one more key takeaway has to do with our housing needs. And what we heard and what we've seen through this planning process is that on the whole, our housing needs are not being met very well in Athens. There's two types of housing that we typically do. We do single family residential, and we do off-campus student rentals. That's about it. If somebody is looking for different housing styles, adults looking for apartments or townhouses or condominiums, or seniors looking for housing, or people who have low incomes. There's a lot of challenges there to actually getting housing in Athens. People who are moving here for jobs have a very difficult time finding housing here. We're also seeing we've talked about this a little bit already today, but we think there's people who want to live in Athens because they can now telecommute to jobs, and we don't have a lot of housing available to them. So focusing on housing for everybody, making sure that we have housing options for people and different, just a little bit more variety besides single family residential and off-campus student rentals will go a long way towards making Athens a better community. So I think that's it for the summary. This PowerPoint's about 30 slides, so I don't want to keep you going on that. But if there's any questions from council or comments, I'd be more than happy to hear from you.
Great.
Thank you.
Member Smedley?
Thank you for the presentation, Paul. I appreciated the planning that went into this. There really was a lot of effort put into making sure that as many people could participate as possible, and that was evident in the various ways feedback was sought. So I appreciate that and how available you were to community associations to talk about the plan. And I'd also appreciate reading the section on the west side, seeing a lot of the issues that we see addressed in the plan. And so hopefully we'll see a lot of those things formally addressed here in the near future. I appreciate all the hard work that went into this to you and your team.
Great. Thank you. Do you have any to add to that, Paul? No?
Just to point out to Council Representative Smedley's comment about participation in the plan. We had, I believe, over 400 different people participate in the plan in one way or another. Some of that was in small group discussions, of course. Some of it was in town hall style large meetings. We did a lot of stakeholder engagement, online survey work. We did meetings on campus where we sat down and talked to students both in classes, and we tried to catch them between classes and better understand their issues. So I do feel, from my perspective, I was really pleased with the amount of participation that we had in the plan. My goals were met with that. I can also say, as a planner, one of the nice things about working in a community like Athens is people actually do want to participate in this stuff. I know some of my colleagues who work in planning are constantly frustrated that they can't get participation in stuff like this. So one of the things I always say is that my job is a lot easier in Athens because people have opinions and they do want to talk about it.
That's
and they're
very
good
true.
opinions too. A lot of the best parts of planning come up from ideas that we hear in these meetings. There's no doubt about it. The community shapes a lot of this, and they know what's going on, and they also travel around. They've seen a lot of different communities and a lot of different experiences, and so they have good insight into things that might work well in Athens.
Great. Member Crowell?
Thank you, Member Fall. Yeah, I just want to echo thanks to Planner Paul and his staff. And I wanted to specifically say that I really like that you came to campus and that you came to our neighborhoods. I mean, I feel like you didn't just do it online or do it at the community center and say, come to us. Yeah, you came to the community, and I really appreciate that. I spoke to a number of people who attended the Highland Park reach by your office to the community. And that was one of the walking away from that with some of the neighbors. They really appreciated that. So great work, and thank you very much.
Member Race?
Thank you. I was one of those residents who participated in the Highland Park meeting, and I just wanted to extend my thanks to Paul for all the work. I saw at the farmers market, gathering information, talking to people, having ideas and Post-its, and at parks, and it really I really appreciate your approach, Paul, because you are so open to hearing from the community, and I think that that's a really valuable asset to all of us here. And so thank you for being willing to not just stay in your office and wait for input to come to you, but to really actively seek it out and welcome it.
Okay. Member Katsas?
Member Fall, thank you. And Planner Paul Loeb, thank you so much for coming this evening and presenting this document. Not to beat a dead horse, but when I attended the first, actually I participated in and I'm sure some other people here also did the same thing, but I did participate in that original planning document that was back in the early 2000s. And when I attended the meeting for to kick this one off, everyone at my table had participated in the last plan. And so I do really like that you figured out other ways to engage with people that didn't necessarily want to go to a big meeting. You got everybody from the early 2000s in that first meeting, and I feel like you picked up a lot of other people along the way. And I think about what we have to do as a council, and people ask me what are some of the more difficult tasks. Making decisions without feeling like you have any input is definitely a very challenging part of this position. So I hope that we will point to this document because we have the participation and we have the ideas that really want to move this city forward. So having this document for council to work off of as we start to review projects in the future, I think this is really extremely helpful. My only question that I have is there any time that, say we did see a large shift in what the city did as per like employment or something else, is there any type of readjust or amendment or anything like that gets approached partway through the document timeline?
Well, as a general rule, what we should be we should be looking at the plan every couple of years, probably every 4 to 5 years, and just kind of double checking our findings on it, but also find out what's still relevant. Also, what major changes might have occurred that we weren't anticipating. And so I think as long as we're kind of going along that route if a significant change happens with our employment mix, for example, or a large employer comes into our community or something major like that, we might want to look at see what's happening there. I can think of some communities, especially in the South and out West, in Texas, Georgia, where communities are just booming. You've got some towns in Texas that had like 1,000 people for 40 years, and then all of a sudden now they've grown by 20 to 50,000 people within 10 years because of migration into the Dallas Metroplex area. So I think if there's a major change with our population or our demand, I do think we probably want to be looking to say, well, what do we need to do here, and then having some discussions on that.
Right. Well, and something that will go forward after the city adopts the plan is that we will develop a ad hoc, what we did with the last plan. We developed an ad hoc committee that went through the plan, developed baselines for what was being looked at in the plan and what was being proposed, established priorities, and some of the stuff that we did for council came right out of that process. The Sustainability Commission came out of that process. And that was one of the first things that we did from the other plan was, as City Council, put that forward. So there is ways to update. And also when we do another plan, like a pedestrian plan or a safe route to school plan in the future, that information goes back and can be put back into this so that you can update things fairly easily. So that's one process. So, Mayor?
Just to add to Paul's comment and yours, Member Fall, to Pete's, Member Kotzis's question, is that, in 2015 and into 2016, one of the things I tasked Paul with was to go through, City Planner Paul Logue, to look at the comprehensive plan to see where we were. And that was year 11 into the current comprehensive plan. And we realized that we had accomplished approximately 80 to 85% of the objectives in the comprehensive plan, and not wanting to wait until the year 2026 to come up with a new comprehensive plan. We set to work on a new comprehensive plan. And so it's pretty dynamic, Member Kotzis, to where I agree with Paul. We should constantly be reviewing the comprehensive plan to see where we're at, to see what has already been delivered, but also to look at things that are in the comprehensive plan and better understand why they may not have been achieved. That was another thing that City Planner Logue and I sat down and tried to get our heads wrapped around. What were the stumbling blocks? What were some of the issues that were difficult to accomplish? And a good example of that would be the rezoning of the north block of Court Street, which was B3 and of lately was rezoned B2D. And that was in that the current comprehensive plan, and trying to understand what was going on. So we will continue to monitor this annually, if not every other year, because I think that's important. The speed at which we got through 80% of the current comprehensive plan is pretty impressive. Hopefully we can, hopefully as a progressive, forward-thinking community, we can continue to accomplish a lot of what is in the comprehensive plan Vision 2040, and not have to wait till 2040.
Very true. So, other questions or comments? So, the reason I call Planner Paul, at one point we had two Pauls and one Pauline and Paula in city council, the city administration. So it got very confusing. So they kind of got their nomenclature of Planner Paul and Mayor Paul. And so that's why. It's my planners are awesome, but I'm very particular, I guess. So I recommend that everybody, especially because this, with this particular update, I think that the presentation for the neighborhoods is going to be a lot more accessible for people and such than the last one. And so that's kind of like a recipe that a lot of people can look at and then work with people in the community who are interested in it. And I think that will go forward and get a lot more community involvement and stuff. I think on the other side of COVID, people are going to understand that community and working together and being able to see somebody in person is really important, and that we're going to be a stronger community afterwards and be able to go forward with a lot of the work that Paul's been putting forward. Chris?
A comment that we are very fortunate because we have a planner Paul, but we also have a planner Chris. And so thanks to you, I think, for helping energize this whole process. Paul, for creating the document that shows, just from the very physical structure of the written document itself, here's what we heard, neighborhood by neighborhood by neighborhood, which is really exciting. And you're right, Chris, I think it will energize people. I think it's also going to provide a sense of direction for our commissions and other groups, and hopefully, as you say, growth for and diversification for our city. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you. If you have any other questions or concerns, just just send them to me or Paul, and we will help you out. And Mayor?
I'll be brief. It's worth noting that this did come through the Planning Commission. Mm-hmm. We met at least 3 times as Paul walked us through every chapter, which was wonderful. Paul, city planner, is typically at the Planning Commission meetings anyway, but and it did, pass unanimously. Well, majority vote. It went through planning commission and on to city council. And it didn't really necessarily have to go through the planning commission, but I deemed it important so that we can at least get it out to the public as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you. So other questions? So great. Well, that was my committee meeting for tonight. Thank you.
That's great. Okay, thank you, Member Fall. We'll now move on to City and Safety Services, and that's chaired by Councilmember Grace with Council Members Fall and Claude Felter on that committee as well.
Thank you, President Isley. We have one agenda item this evening, and that involves proposed changes to city water and sewer rates and other rates related to those. So I will just briefly state what the proposals that have been sent to me. And so for the sewer rate, the proposal is a 4% increase in that rate. Water is a 3% increase that is proposed. And then additionally, there is our stormwater rate. And this is what was mentioned earlier in Member Crowell's Finance and Personnel Committee, because this is, I believe, a significant portion of what would fund the new environmental coordinator position. And this particular rate has not been increased for, I believe I've heard 10 years. But it is currently for residential customers, the rate is $2, and the proposed increase would take it to $4. For commercial, it is currently $4, both commercial and industrial, and the new rate would be $6. So that's those are the proposed increases on the stormwater rate, and then there are some additional fees also. Septage receiving is currently 5 cents and is proposed to go to 6.5. Delinquency letters are currently a $15 fee with a proposed increase to a $25 fee. Delinquent turn-on fee is currently $40, and the new fee would be $50. A transfer turn-on fee is currently $35 with a proposed new rate of $50. And then there's also a proposed new fee, which is an after-hours turn-on or turn-off. And this would be for when a city employee is called out to turn the water off at the meter. For instance, if there's a plumbing emergency at a location and the plumber needs to have the water shut off at the meter, then someone from the city goes, and we don't currently charge a fee for that, is my understanding. But of course, the city does pay for that employee to go to perform that service. And it, as emergencies tend to happen, it's often probably night, weekend, things like that. So there is a cost to the city. And that proposed fee would be either $40 or $50. The information I have has it undecided at this time. My questions related to these different increases are about one. I understand that, like our stormwater rate hasn't increased for some time, but the sewer and trash have both increased recently, and these go on the same bill to the consumer, to our residents. It's all as one total. And so our residents, the ones that have spoken to me regarding rates, feel that they are being nickel and dimed because we may not have increased the stormwater rate for 10 years, but we increased the sewer and the trash already this year. And that's showing up as increased cost to them. And so I I would like to know when the last water rate increase was and what those increases were, like what the percentage increases were, like when we last did those. And also, in terms of the miscellaneous fees, to me, charging a fee for a delinquency letter is, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is a letter that goes out warning the customer that their bill is behind and that they are facing shutoff. So this is likely going to someone who is experiencing financial difficulties and has not paid their water bill. And if their water is turned off, I understand someone has to go out and turn it off and someone has to go to turn it back on. And there is a cost involved in that. But to add to their bill for sending them a letter to tell them they're delinquent, I honestly, I'm concerned about even having a $15 fee on that, let alone increasing it to $25. And if I'm misunderstanding what is involved in the delinquency letter fee, someone please correct me on that. But and then also the transfer turn-on fee, because that, as far as just the cost for establishing a new resident, that to pay $50 to get your water transferred to your name. If that's correct, that's what that fee is, that also seems pricey. So then my understanding from the auditor's office is that they would like to see the sewer and water rate increases go into effect on January 1. The first time that this, if this is put into legislation, the first reading for this would be December 7th. And so I'm concerned about the timing of this. I'm concerned about passing legislation right before the holiday that is a rate increase on our customers as soon as, like, the very next billing cycle, right after the first of the year. And so while introducing the information that it's been sent to me, I'm also voicing my concerns about this. And I understand that at least a portion of the sewer and water rate increases are needed to meet our debt fund obligation. And we have the financial obligation to pay our bills as a city. But I want to be sure that we are doing the best that we can to minimize the cost to our residents right now. And so I would really like to see the clearest possible breakdown of what our financial obligations are and what our projected revenue is at current rates, and then at different rate increases, if that is available. So that is my introduction and commentary on the rate increases. And I'll take questions from the committee, but our SSD Chief Pyle is here also with certainly better and more information than I have, as is our auditor. So I will very likely be deferring their questions to those two experts. Yes, Member Clodfelter.
I guess Member Grace sort of took my questions, actually, because I'm concerned about the same things. So many people are struggling economically right now that I really think we should try to keep the fee increases as low as possible. And I am also particularly worried about the delinquency fee for the letters. If somebody, Member Grace already said it basically, but I guess I just want to reiterate, if somebody is struggling financially enough that it's hard to pay the water bill, then increasing a fee that I think might be better not to have at all would make it even harder for them to catch up. And they would perhaps be more likely to have their water turned off. So if there's a way not to increase that delinquency letter fee, I think that would be kinder for people who are struggling right now. if we don't get the fee increase on that?
I raising my hand, forgetting that I'm chairing this current meeting. I do believe that because the city is not currently doing any shutoffs, I don't believe that any delinquency letters are going out at this time because there are no shutoffs happening. And I see the mayor nodding and confirming that. But I still would say that if even in non-pandemic times, if there's someone who is far enough behind on their water bill that they would be receiving a delinquent letter, that to add a significant fee for that warning seems a bit unjust to me. And unless, as I said, unless I misunderstand what is involved in that notification process. Yes, Member Fall.
Thank you. I want to kind of explain why stormwater fund is an important fund. Basically, well, part of it is that the EPA does require certain regulations and rules to be followed in reporting. But at the same time, stormwater is a significant contribution to non-point water source pollution, which impacts not only the Hocking, but all our smaller rivers. Margaret Creek is an excellent example of that sort of thing, with runoff going in and causing high fecal counts, those sort of things. That's why we have a stormwater system that we're trying to develop and manage in a more holistic approach. And so it really is important to not only the city's health, the environment's health, but also downstream, because what goes into the Hocking usually is being drinking by somebody else downstream. So we all have to, think about that when we're changing our oil that goes into the stormwater that goes into the Hocking, which is very bad. So that's why we have that. Thank you.
Yes, Member Katsas.
Member Grace, thank you, and I apologize for bringing this discussion forward a couple committees ago.
No problem.
And I was, and I had a little bit of background because I was present at the mayor's auditors meeting earlier this week, and a lot of the additional fees, the delinquent letter, the transfer or shut off, those were explained to us as being some of the lowest compared to some of our neighboring cities. And I wish I know where my notes are, but I didn't want to get up and run over and grab them. But just looking at, like villages like Albany and Chansey and things like that, I don't know if Director Pyle has those specific numbers, but they were in many cases, it seemed like we were running the lowest. And so I wonder if this is something similar, that a lot of our fees just weren't revisited for a very long period of time, and we're just, are we in a catch up phase that we shouldn't be doing on a decades basis.
I do think that is definitely a possibility with the stormwater rate increase, that perhaps if small incremental increases to adjust for just cost of management changes were made along the way, then we wouldn't have more significant increases all done at one point in time, which we saw that the same thing happen with our garbage rates earlier this year, that when general cost of operating things gradually increases, but the rates don't, we do hit these points at time. But I guess I'm wondering just how much difference does it make to the city's budget line, or especially for those delinquency fees or things like that, in a normal time when we're operating normally, and does someone know if if my understanding of that delinquency letter is correct, is that just like a warning letter? Chief Pyle?
That's my understanding as well.
Okay.
Councilmember Kautzis is right. I had Tina Rogers from Utilities Billing reach out to Nelsonville, Albany, and other entities that charge rates like this, and we definitely had lower rates than those entities. And so the rate suggestions were simply based on comparisons to other locales in Athens County. And then some of them did charge for call out, after hours call out, where we didn't. I talked with just specifically about that fee. Jessica Dine indicated that would be very helpful because there are contractors who will call at the last minute at 4:00 in the afternoon for a water shutoff, cost the city overtime dollars to perform that function. And so she felt this would be a good deterrent for that kind of fee for preventing contractors from poor planning and things like that. So we just had real brief conversations about this, about the miscellaneous fees. So I can go back and get further information. I did have a brief conversation with Tina about what kind of rate increase, the frequency of the delinquency letters and the transfers and shutoffs. She said sometimes they have 30 a week. And so I didn't get the impression that these were financial hardship issues, though. But I'll go back and get details from her and give a report to council before next Monday. And I will tell you, I can share with you what Andrew Chicky shared. I think the auditor reviewed it, and I didn't hear any negative criticism of Andrew Chicky's numbers, but when he factored in the proposed rates in his review, the average 2,000 gallon a month customer for water, sewer, and storm water fees would realize a $3.87 increase. Would go from $53.52 for 2,000 gallons. That's all three fees raised to $57.39. We can verify those numbers and have the auditor look at that with his numbers if they haven't, but pretty sure that he sent that to him. So these are just proposals. I will say that the auditors run their own numbers on this, and I'm sure the auditor Heck will speak to this, and they recommend that we raise the water and sewer rates to stay in the black with those funds.
Member Crowell.
Thank you, Member Grace. I think we can hear from the auditor, and that will be very helpful. The information that I have is just to make a connection between the increases in the trash and recycling program. We had a contract that we needed the fees from residents to pay for. So that was, a new contract. And you're right, Member Grace, that the cost of services had increased. But the Director Riggs set the increases for trash and recycling to be able to pay the contract that Athens Hocking Recycling Centers had won the RFP process. And I think we're in a somewhat, unfortunately, similar situation with sewer, is that especially with the work that we've had done at our wastewater treatment plant, we have rates that we need to be able to pay our bills. But we can hear more specifically. I'm also interested in what other communities' rates are. We looked at that very closely when we went through the recycling and waste process, and I think it would be very instructive for this process as well. I did want to ask if the city administration knew at all if the delay in the county's sewer project going to the east of the city and the tap fees that the city might have seen for the sewer have impacted our sewer budget. If by that process not happening as quickly as we thought, whether that's also impacted the amount of money we have in our sewer fund to pay our debt, if that makes sense. Thank you, Member Grace.
Thank you. And yes, I appreciate those comments, Member Crowell. And I certainly understand if, much like in the situation we were in with the garbage fund, when we have an obligation, and in that case, we are obligated to provide sanitary services for the city, and we have reviewed the options, the contracts, the proposals submitted, then we do need to take the steps necessary in order to pay for those services. And it is the same with our sewer and water rates. I just want to be sure that that we are being as careful with these funds as we can be, so as to not create the feeling among our residents that we don't understand or appreciate the financial hardship that many of them may be experiencing, and just that we are mindful of how it feels to have our different bills regularly increasing and paychecks not. So I just want to put that there. And Member Fall, and then I think our auditor is waiting to go
along with that, maybe we could phase in the increases instead of it being 4% in the first month, phase it in over 3 months or something, so that people can budget better, because it's hard. It's really hard to budget right now, and Christmas is going to be really hard and stuff. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Fall. Auditor Hecht, thank you for being here this evening. And what would you like to share with us regarding these different issues?
Well, several things. First of all, the environmental control officer position is important. We are already taking $35,000. We're paying for that contract. Will be towards that position. So that's, a help right there. I think that if anybody knows the lab techs, they realize, how important their positions are, and that we could very easily be left with no backup for those positions. And it's important that we figure out a way to do that, and this was one of them. The stormwater fees were instituted in 2011, and so the fees haven't been changed since then. When Andy started the process about that position, he was going to fund that entire position out of stormwater, and that's where he came up with his increases a year ago, which are very similar to what we're still asking over a year ago for the stormwater, aside from the fact that they, haven't been increased in 9 years. To my knowledge, we have increased sewer rates every year. Same with water rates, although that's not a council issue. Every year, because that's what we're supposed to do. We cannot not increase those rates when we have a lot of employees in that department who have automatic contract raises, just as the non-union people are going to get their increase in this year. Cost of living, and when we do that, that means we pay more for everything else. For all their benefits, we call them, but Medicare, PERS, everything else. We pay more into it because we're paying them more, and taxes. And so, we can't not institute increases. When we started the process for the sewer plant improvements, Jessica and Andy did a spreadsheet and went out actually 30 years, 20 years is a normal planning for that, and looked at what we would need to increase every year to pay for that. It's $24 million improvements. And some of those increases were 5%, 8%, 9%. on their chart, they have more than that. I asked them to redo it and never make it double digits. I just think that's a lot for people to take. And so they did. But we have an obligation to fund these operations, and they are supposed to be self-supporting. And so I can't imagine why we wouldn't increase the rates every year. I know this is a terrible time, and I get that. But I think that the 3% is kind of like what we did all the time, whether we were sure we needed it or not. We probably did, but I just think that we are back at the minimal that went on for years before we did such expensive improvements. And so it's not unreasonable. And I also believe that the environmental coordinator position is a minimal part of the increases in these funds. It is now not just out of stormwater, but being split water, sewer, and stormwater. And then let's see if I can remember everything. But, there's no action on that county sewer line. And we have spent quite a bit of money on improvements and equipment to be prepared for that. And we haven't seen any return on any of that because it's not a thing yet. And so that's another thing that we've been dealing with. And, we still have to pay for whatever we did. Sewer has been struggling in my mind for several years, and maybe it is partly because of those improvements that we're still paying off. But the debt service in these funds is just phenomenal. And our water plant improvements, loan payments, or bond payments actually start in January. That is a $6.7 million project. The bond payments are extensive. And I can send you whatever you want. However, if anybody wants to see what the operations involve, they're in the reports that my office sends out monthly. And if you even just look on your abbreviated, the budget ordinance, you'll see that water and sewer are broken out into 3 sections. We have plants, we have maintenance, and we have administration. So the costs are they're extensive. Those are big operations. And I don't think that what we're asking for is any more than we should be asking for anyway. And as Tom said, it might come out, and maybe we should look into that. People do like specific amounts. We like it. We live right in town, and to see what it really means to people, and work around that. I thought the stormwater fees were going to go from $2 to $3 for residential, and you had them at 2 to 4. So I don't know when that got changed, but we could rethink that maybe. I get what you're saying. I live on the west side. I know how people live in Athens. Not everybody lives out in University Estates, and but I just feel that we have a legal obligation to fund these operations. And everybody wants water. Everybody wants their toilet to flush. It's just, there's just no questioning those operations and cutting back, keeping up with it. As far as the other fees go, the letters and everything, I agreed that it was a good idea to talk about that stuff at council, but those are administrative decisions. But I do think it is a good idea to talk about all of those. And I think one of the problems there is that, we don't always increase our fees enough and regularly. And then when we do, it's like, oh my gosh, we need a 10% increase. And I hate when they do that to me, and it's just like, we have to do at least a minimal increase. As I said, our sewer debt is about 1.25 million a year. That's just our debt. That's not all of those employees and the operations, the cost of vehicles, the expenses for those departments is so far beyond like my department. We don't even have anyone getting their cell phone paid for, let alone vehicles or anything like that. And uniforms and the materials. If you've ever been down to the water sewer department and seen all the pipes and the fittings and the things that they have to have down there, they're expensive to run. And I'm afraid that people want those services. We need those services, and we have to pay for those services. And that's all I can say is I really want to see these, sewer has been struggling, and they have this debt. It's just a lot for next year. The total in those three, water and sewer, is like $1.7+ million. And water's taking on $154,000 a year new payment for the water treatment plant. That stuff's not cheap. And I just think that January 1st is the absolute appropriate time to do that. And that's when we've always done that, except for times in between when we had something special like plant improvements. And that's how some of those other ones came about. And I don't know what else to tell you. I just feel like there's no way around this one. And, if you want to maybe work with the administration on some of the other fees, and hold off, or I don't know. They're certainly not unreasonable, but as you said, maybe now is not the time to bring them up to everybody else's costs. But the fees that we have to have, we just really have to have, and I think 4% and 3% are really minimal. And I can research and go back and see what those increases were every year, because I have to fill out a survey for OWDA every year and show any increases. I have to include any ordinances or letters from the SSD showing the increases and how much we brought in, how much our operating costs are, how much debt service we carry, and how many customers we have, number of delinquent customers. They want to know that we are collecting enough money to pay our debt obligations. So I can send you copies of those too. And we have to have insurance and, all kinds of stuff. So I don't know what else to tell you, but in my mind, the water and sewer increases are really not unreasonable and not avoidable for January 1st. We're going to be in trouble, especially in the sewer fund. And I think just to put another spin on it is we've got more than twice the number of delinquent accounts right now than we did pre-COVID. We have seen a reduced amount of revenue in water, sewer, and stormwater, just like, in lots of other areas like parking and meters and tickets and all that kind of stuff. And so, I don't know. Anybody have any other questions for me?
Thank you, Auditor Hecht. I guess
I will send you anything extra that you want. And I think I've gotten in the habit of sending information to the Finance Committee that doesn't. I'm fine if that stuff is forwarded. It's all public record. But I feel like some council members might be like, "What's she sending me this for?" But we keep a debt schedule, can show you all of our debt, interest rates, payments, etc. Our unappropriated balance sheet is very helpful. Our fund balance sheets, our fund balance amounts are, in our monthly reports. But those might be helpful to everyone. I'm happy to send those out now to give you an idea of what our debt service looks like for next year. We've taken on another $500,000 loan in the general fund for fire equipment, and so we just can't stop operating, and we have to fund it, and we just have to do what we can. I understand the idea of not overcharging, but as Tom said, Andrew did a lot of research on this, and we're trying to come up with as fair amounts as we can.
I appreciate that, and I want to clarify that council approval is not needed for the water rate increase, but council does have authority on the sewer rate and the stormwater rate increases. And I just want to be sure that the increases we're talking about are truly absolutely necessary, and also. I do feel that if these rate increases, like if we're at a point now on November 23rd, when this is the first time council is discussing this in committee, and these have to be in place by January 1, I feel that is not best practices for us, because the only way that we can pass this legislation is by holding us, without suspending the rules, is by holding a special session in December. Just in order to go into effect by January 1, would this also then have to have an emergency clause, Clerk Walker? Yeah, so I would really appreciate adequate time for, if this is an expected increase that we need to do to cover our debt obligations, then I feel we should have adequate time for it to go through the process in a timely manner, without emergencies or special meetings being required. And ideally, I think like this, if this was needed January 1, I think we should have talked about this in October, so that the notice could go on November or December bills to tell people, hey, there's a rate increase coming, and for your 2,000 gallon usage, it's going to be a total of $3 and some change. And just the courtesy of that advance notice to people, and also for me personally as a member of council, so that I don't feel like it's necessary to rush things through in order to make them happen at the time that we're being told by the administration it's needed. And so I feel that that's an important issue, is that if these financial obligations are known, then we should have adequate time to discuss them. And so I want to make that clear. But then Mayor Patterson and President Nisley, you both had your hands up at different times. Mayor Patterson, you had your hand up earlier. If you would like to say something. I
would. There's something that Councilmember Crowell asked, and unfortunately, I think it kind of got glossed over, although Auditor Heck did mention it, and it is that the county sewer extension. We have an agreement with the county on the tap fees, and there has, as Auditor Heck indicated, there has been some financial outlay on the city's side for design engineering and some materials. So the plan is that the county is going to be doing it in 8 phases. I know, but the lion's share of the customers or taps are going to be in the first phase. And once they get a good bid, I mean, that's the whole thing, is that they have gone out twice already. Hopefully a third time's a charm. And if they come in with acceptable bids, then part of that agreement is that the tap fees for the first 4 phases, I believe, that money will be released to the city. So that will be coming in. The other part of this equation, and I can certainly share this agreement with council, I'm more than happy to share it with anyone, as we've worked this through with Chief Pyle and the county commissioners, is that the remaining 4 phases, the county has 3 years total in which to have those phases in place with the customers online, so that we are able to recoup those remaining tap fees in short order. And again, there are some clauses in there that are helpful, I think, to City Council. So this conversation of these rates is not necessarily tied to that county sewer extension, although, that is another piece of the equation because of the increases in load that will be coming into the city. But that's through, again, these tap fees, as well as some other things that are in that agreement with I&I and our metering at the 3 connection points for the new sewer extension.
Thank you, Mayor. President Nicely.
Oh, just to mention that Clerk of Council Debbie Walker has provided the debt payment due dates. That's a very useful document, Auditor Hecht, and thank you. We've got it on the shared Google Drive, and I urge people to, I always make a copy. It's got its own file folder for me because it's a huge obligation, and it is a huge responsibility to make sure we're bringing enough money in those proprietary funds to be able to pay the debt. And the other thing is the unappropriated balance document. I will share that with council because that's another useful tool along with those monthly, all your monthly financial reports that we get every month. So, yep.
Thank you, President Nicely. Are there other comments or questions? Auditor Hecht, were you waving?
I was just going to reply to you're absolutely right about timing. I have felt like a lot of things have come up at the end of the year that are later this year than usual. And I just think that, we're not leading the same life. A lot of people in the city, including me, have worked from home. It's not the same as being there all the time. And it's been harder sometimes for me to get a hold of people, to find out what's going on, who's in charge of things. Because they're not available at work. And, it's just kind of the nature of what's happened. And you're right, it seems late, but I guess in my mind, after all the years of doing this, it's kind of business as usual. This is nothing new. Increasing sewer rates is just nothing new. I've been doing this 18 years and, it's 19 actually, with 2 years on council. It's just nothing new, and it's something that we do. I think bringing up a new position like environmental control position, brand new, no precedence for us. That takes more discussion. I'm not sure this needs that much more discussion. On the other hand, you're right. These are difficult times, and it's just really tough. So my thing is, it's up to council. They can pass it when they want, but we can't go very much longer without increasing them. And I guess I think it's just a good habit to get into a certain time of year, always doing it. But, we haven't always held to that anyway. If you're more comfortable, that's up to you. And I don't know how everybody else feels. It's just very important that it gets done. In my mind. But again, it's not on me, and I'm not even over those departments, so it's not up to me to come up with these things. We have a new service safety director, and it's one of those things. You can sit in the audience at council, as I did every week for a year, but when you get up on that podium, it is night and day. And, you think you know what's going on in the city, but actually doing the job is it's a lot harder. And I think there have been a lot of extra things that we're all dealing with this year too, COVID funding, not the least of them. And so, I feel like a lot of things have come up late and on short notice. To be honest, I'm surprised that we got our budget to council started in October, honestly, or November, I mean. It started in November. I mean, it often does 3 readings in December. So, and those are even in better times. So, it's just, it's difficult, but, it's up to you. But those are my opinions about moving forward now or not. It's not, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I'm not going to be mad at anybody. I have learned very well that, I don't always get my way and I can live with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Auditor Hecht. And if there's nothing else, That is the only item on the agenda. So that concludes service and safety for this evening.
Thanks, Councilmember Grace. All right, we'll move on to Transportation Committee, chaired by Councilmember Kotsis and with members Clodfelter and Crowell.
President Nicely, thank you, and I thank everybody for hanging out here till the end. Right on the heels of that rate conversation, we are going to talk about the rates for monthly parking garage fees. Just like so many of our other departments, when you look at, we've been enlightened as of late of the issues of, say, what Arts, Parks, and Recs have been coming up against. If we look at our parking garage as a facility, one that we invested additional enhancements into prior to our current situation, so we have a note that's due on June 1st for $175,000 to help pay for some of those improvements. We're not going to make it. And so administration has looked over the what we currently charge for our monthly users of the parking garage. So this is no we're not looking at raising any of the meter rates. So the majority of short-term parkers, people that would be coming uptown just for things here and there, they're not going to be impacted. But what we're looking at is three different monthly rates. One is the reserved rates, which are on the first level and below. The other one are parking permits that are paid for monthly, and they park, I believe it's one of the threes. It's one of the third levels and above. They have the option to park there. And then the last one is the monthly parking spaces on the College Street lot that we lease that whole area from the Presbyterian Church. So as follows, the lower level reserve spaces, so that's one and below, currently they're $125 a month. They would be raised to $150. From the upper level, above level 3 spaces, and so they are not a reserve space, but you just pay a monthly fee to park. Those would go from $125, from $75 to $125. And we would also be increasing the amount of those permits, going from 50 to 100 permits. The last one, the parking on College Street, instead of $75 monthly fee, it would go to $100 monthly fee. The final thing that I've seen in the draft legislation that I did want to ask the Service Safety Director about, this was an added point where the Service Safety Director would be allowed to do written agreements to lease multiple non-reserved parking spaces, so that's 3 and above, and offer an appropriate discount, but the minimum cost could not be less than $100. So I was just kind of curious, since that wasn't discussed to me when I talked with Andrew Chicky or anyone else, just kind of what kind of scenario we might be looking at for having that type of arrangement. Past that, I will say that currently we do have 125,000. We need 175,000 by June 1st. They believe that the rent increase might net an additional 33,000. So it gets us closer. It doesn't necessarily bridge the gap. So we're not attempting to improve the bottom line, profit line for this facility by adding these additional rates. Do we have any questions right now? Member Clodfelter.
I'm just curious. One idea in there sounds really smart, which is to double the number of permits for those monthly parking spots. But do we know if there's like a waiting line for that? Is there enough demand to get 100 of them?
Currently, right now, of the 50 spaces, 39 of them are rented by the county. And so I don't know if that means there's an additional 11 spaces that are still available for rent, or does the county take the lion's share of, do they take 80% of our permits? SSD Pyle, please.
So my understanding of it is that the 50 reserve spots for the upper floors was up to this point reserved essentially for county employees. We've never, to my knowledge, extended it, publicized that those spaces were available to the public. They were essentially provided to the county through an arrangement under previous administration and SSD. And so when we looked at it, we thought the business model could change slightly. The county employees rent those by each department. So each, like for instance, one of the common pleas judge may rent 5 spaces, or the sheriff's office might rent 3. And I don't have exact numbers, but that's how it's done. We thought maybe there would be the business model could change to lease a minimum number of spaces in their entirety to the county through the commissioner's office on behalf of the employees. And then while we were looking at that, we thought that why limit that to the county? If there was guaranteed income for the city and leasing additional reserve spaces, we could extend that same kind of deal to anybody uptown who wanted to lease spaces in bulk for their employees. And that could be OU, that could be a private business owner, it could be just about anybody. That's why we suggested raising the rate from 75 to 125. So as an individual, you would pay a higher rate, but if an entity rented on your behalf and did it through bulk, we could provide a discount. And so that would incentivize entities entering into those types of agreements. Currently, we have no knowledge of any written agreement with the county that explains all this, although we looked. So it was apparently just done through arrangement of the administration at the time. And that ordinance that exists now that provides for 50 non-reserved permit spaces for the upper floors.
Please continue, Member Clodfelter.
I'm just curious. I really don't know what the demand would be for that. I don't know if there'd be enough people to get 100 or to get 50 spots, but just in case, as kind of a contingency plan, what if there is a lot of demand and more than 50 people would like those reserved spaces? Do you have a plan for that?
Well, it would be first come, first serve. I had initially asked for up to 150. I haven't seen the revised ordinance. So at some point, somebody rolled it back to 100. But my initial proposal was to authorize us to lease up to 150. And I thought the words up to were vitally important because I thought we'd start with 100 and just limit it there. It doesn't mean we have to lease 150. We could start with 100. And if there was high demand, we could consider at that point how that demand is impacting parking for meter payers,
right.
Just people on a daily basis. And so we didn't want to shove out, short-term meter rental people with long-term permit holders. But seems pretty consistent that there's 175, 185 spaces on a daily basis available in the parking garage when we're at regular use, which is part of the issue we're battling is we're not at regular use. Parking garage hasn't been full since the pandemic. There's just not a demand for parking right now, not at the meters, nor in the parking garage. And so we have to find a way to raise revenue in the parking garage. This is just the first idea that we took on.
I think overall, it's a really smart approach. And I'm glad you're thinking creatively about this. It will, I think you're really smart to try to balance the parking places that people put their money into versus the monthly rates. But I agree that maybe we could have an even higher number of people who would pay monthly rates because even before COVID, the garage was rarely full, except maybe for graduation or homecoming or, the big weekends at OU. But yeah, it would be important to really consider that carefully.
So our hope is to market it the right way, because this is, covered parking, where a lot of employees who work in the downtown area rent private spots, maybe not through their employer, but just through, they rent them for convenience for themselves. And they have to walk several blocks and their car's out in the elements. And in wintertime, we all know how that goes.
Yep.
And so to be able to lease a spot in the parking garage, even if it's at the $125 rate as an individual, and have cover, it could be. And so we're hoping to attract new parkers, not move parkers from the street into the garage or move them from meters to leases where we don't really see an increase in revenue. We're hoping to attract through this model new parkers and new entities. Perhaps, an office at Ohio University would like to rent 10 spaces for their employees. And so my thought, as far as the sliding fee or the discount, would be we would just set a rate 1 through 5 is this, 5 through 15 is that, 15 through 25 is that, and anything over whatever is $100. But I wanted to make sure that council had tight control over the minimum, because it would stand to reason if we were going to raise those 50 non-reserve spots right now from 75, we would typically raise those to 100. So that's why I set that maximum discount could be no less than 100. So, because I have a feeling that county may come along and say, we'd like to rent 50 spaces a month for our employees, and we would want to provide them a decent discount for that kind of bulk rental.
And I will mention the draft legislation that came through on Friday does specify up to 150 spaces.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say my thinking in that is that way, if we did have high demand, we wouldn't have to come back to council, but also there'd be some control of it, that we wouldn't just initially lease out 150 spaces. We'd lease out up to maybe 100, maybe even 75 to start. But that gives us control over how many we lease out. And if we see that we can lease out 150, then we would do that. But not at the cost of the short-term parkers. We don't want to do that.
Okay. Member Grace.
Thank you, Member Katsas. Just hopefully a quick question. Are the leases for these reserve spaces, are they a year long? Or is this a month-to-month situation?
So I believe, I'm probably going to give you the wrong answer here because I've heard so many different rate increases and permit renewals and stuff. I believe they're initially a year, but there is an escape clause in the rental agreement that requires 30 days notice. So if you get out early, it costs you you have to stay in for 30 days from the date of your notice. I think after the initial year, it's just month to month. And that's how most people have dealt with them. So technically it's a month to month agreement.
And I just wonder, right now during COVID, there's really low demand for parking. If there are enough employees, though, uptown that would like to have reserved spaces. Right now, I mean, it'd be fantastic if we could rent out 150.
Sure.
But maybe come summer, well, summer's usually pretty slow, maybe by next fall, which is less than a year from now, or less than a year from when these would be rented, there would be higher demand for more meter usage in the garage. So that's what made me wonder about the length of the agreement.
So I raised that very question and had the same concern. If we leased them out and found out it was problematic, how do we get out of them? That's typical lease language. And that 30-day escape clause is for both entities. So we could call, 25 people and say, hey, we're not going to lease your permit after next month or renew your permit after next month. And they would, have to go find other parking. And that's exactly why we wanted it that way. So, but that's all language. Rather than putting it in the ordinance, we consulted with the law director. She's been part of this conversation, and she agreed that would be part of the rental agreement or the lease agreement. So that's typical.
Thank you.
Auditor Heck.
I just wanted to clarify that these aren't actual leased spaces. These are a hang tag parking just like our city employees have over there. So if there's something big going on and there are also meters at these spaces. Those are the long-term meters. And so if something was going on, and even though you have a hang tag, if you drive up there and there are no spaces, you're out of luck. That won't happen again anytime soon, although it has happened. If you're like a city employee, you go out to lunch and come back. Sometimes you can't find a space. But that would be people, those are just certain times of the year. But these are not the numbered reserved spaces where they are guaranteed a space to park in every day.
Correct. We call these hunting permits. They go hunt for a parking space. So that's right.
Good. That's the first time I've heard that. Are there any other questions about this at this point? Seeing none, I would love to say that we Transportation Committee is done.
Chris, you're muted.
Thanks. That Councilmember Cots says that means we're done for the evening at 9:35, and our